710 KRV Talkback. Dr. Gelman, home of the Iron Microphone, 1-800-580-8255, 1-800-580-TALK, streaming live on KURV.com. Here we present a viewpoint you're not going to hear anywhere else because they can't do it. And they're not interested in doing it because it actually takes work rather than regurgitating the blather from the blogospheres or the media or anywhere else. We actually take the time to investigate what we're talking about and try to give you in-depth information, but in a way that is understandable, so you can take it away with you. We're not here into higher mathematics. We're here to we're talking about politics. There's nothing higher about politics. There's certainly nothing mathematical there. But I was listening to the programs the other day here, and it's just amazing how we're not even aware of how the government propaganda exists to indoctrinate us. We just sit there and allow it to wash over us without even being cognizant of what's going on. I don't know if you've noticed, but if you listen to the media, Fox News and all the rest included, you listen to the media recently, there seems to be this endless occurrences of gunplay. Every day there's these incidents that are occurring all around the country, making it appear that there's been an upsurge in gun violence. But is that true? Well, of course not. For example, last year, 500 Chicagoans were murdered. Another 5,000 were injured with guns, being shot but not killed. You didn't hear a word about it. It was a record year, Chicago. 500 gunshot murders, almost all black. I mean, it's a national disgrace. You didn't hear a word about it. This year, they're starting off the year higher than last year in Chicago. You heard a word about it? No. One reason is because they're black kids. And the media is racist, as is the Democrat Party, which the media supports. And, of course, the government is racist. Therefore, they don't care if black kids or Spanish-speaking kids get killed. A few white kids get killed, and then the whole world goes into an uproar. But the number of blacks in this country that are murdered, young blacks, is vastly greater than the number of young whites, even though that blacks only account for 13% of the population, while the white population is about 70%. In the United States, 10,000 people die every single day. Every single day, 10,000 people die. From all kinds of causes. Illnesses, car accidents, violence, all kinds of stuff. But the media focuses on 1, 2, 3 at the most. Why do they focus on those 3? And interestingly, why is every single channel on the radio and on the television report exactly the same 3 cases? Why does every outlet report exactly the same news? If you flip from one channel to the next, and it doesn't matter if it's hardcore MSNBC or softcore Fox News, they all report the same things. With all the events going on in the United States, 10,000 deaths a day. 10,000 deaths a day. Are they saying that only 3 or 2 or 1 are of any particular interest? I would imagine that the people involved in those other 10,000 deaths probably feel that what theirs is more important than what's being seen on the TV. The point of this discussion is to let you know that the press is not free. It is a propaganda arm of the government and exists to promote the government. And right now, the government is interested in taking away your means of self-defense. Therefore, they're creating this campaign in order to do so. And one aspect of the campaign is to make it appear as if there's an upsurge in gun-related violence, and that something needs to be done about taking guns off the streets. But going back to Chicago, where you're not allowed to own a gun, why is it the murder capital, the gun murder capital of the United States today, if you're not even allowed to own a gun in Chicago? On the other hand, Washington, D.C., which used to have the highest gun violence in the United States, is now going to an all-time low of under 200 homicides in 2012. Coincidentally, guns are now legal in Washington, D.C. I'm sure one thing has nothing to do with the other. That guns are illegal in Chicago, and it has the highest gun-related homicide rate. And guns are legal in Washington, D.C., and has a declining gun-related homicide rate. But that kind of information is never brought forward, is it? The media exists to instill panic, create crisis, and to promote government intervention into things that government should have nothing to do over. What is a slave, anyway? We think we're free? How are you free? What do you do that is not subject to government surveillance? What profession do you have in which the government does not intervene? Do you pay a franchise tax? Do you pay a corporate tax? Do you live in a home? Do you drive a car? Is not the car built under government regulations where the factories are dictated to by the Occupational Safe and Health Agency, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Equal Employment and Opportunity Commission, and endless other agencies which dictate to these automobile companies what kind of a workplace they must have, how much they must pay their employees, what kind of benefits they must give their employees, how many of each race they must hire. You don't think that affects the cost of your car? How about at your home? How many government agencies are involved in your home? The Environmental Protection Agency, the Energy Department, all the city and state and county and federal agencies that determine the kind of material that can be put into your home. Or how about the property taxes that you pay to pay for the public school system? Let's talk about the public school system, the free public education, which is the most expensive component of every state's budget. Why is something that is free the most expensive component of every state budget, accounting for 25 to 40% of the budget of every single state, and rising? What's free about it? In the state of Texas, the cost of educating a child is $13,000. In Los Angeles, it's $25,000 per child per year. State of Texas, you have 20 children to the room, let's say. That costs $250,000 a year. Where's that $250,000 going? Are they paying the teacher $250,000? Well, they're paying them a lot, but they're not paying them that much. What about in California, Los Angeles? Classroom of 20 students, maybe there's more, but let's say 20, $500,000. $500,000 per class per year, 20 students. Where does that money go? $500,000. Is that free? Why does public education cost 2 or 3 times more than private education? Everybody tells you, oh, private education is too expensive. But where it costs $24,000 a year for public school per child in Los Angeles, private schools are around $8,000 a year. They would be a lot less expensive if there were more people if there was an opening up of the system, but only the wealthy can afford, or the well-to-do can afford to go to private schools. Why is that? Because the government steals so much of your money through Social Security, Medicare taxes, property taxes, sales taxes, and every other kind of tax. You don't have enough money to send your child to private school, and so you have to send them to public school. Well, everybody says the public schools are great. Well, what if the government came to you and said you have to buy a particular car or a particular cell phone or a particular computer? How much would you like that? What if the government came to you and said you have to buy a certain kind of clothes, a certain watch, a certain television? What would you say to that? You don't think that'd be a good idea, but somehow the government telling you that you have to send your child to this particular school, that's acceptable. You find that not only acceptable, but you think that's good. Now, how is that good? You have no say over the curriculum. You have no say over the teacher. You have no say over the quality of the product. You have no say over whom your child has to sit next to. You have no say over the pedophile that's teaching your child or the drug addict that's sitting next to your child. You have no say about that. And the government makes sure that you don't. And then you have no say about the propaganda that the government requires be taught in your school. That government is benevolent. That redistribution of wealth is good. That the United States ought to be the policeman of the world. Nothing about that is said. We just accept it. Or the fact that in school they teach you that homosexuality is a normal variant of human lifestyle. Really. It's a normal variant, but that's what they teach your children. And then your children grow up to believe that and therefore behave in abnormal ways because they're being taught that it's normal behavior. The school hands out condoms and birth control because they say, well, you're going to have sexual activity anyway. You might as well be protected. What is the school saying? It's condoning sexual behavior among adolescents, condoning it. Once the voices of authority, perceived authority, say that it's acceptable to do something, it's tolerable, then people do it. And so you have more and more sexual activity among adolescents with the result of more and more teenage pregnancies, more and more teenage abortions, more and more sexually transmitted disease among teenagers and, of course, throughout the entire society. Why does government do that? Because that kind of behavior makes you enslaved to the government. You end up on welfare because your child is born out of wedlock and you're a single parent, which is the single greatest predictor of poverty, is being born into a household of a single parent. So now you're in the thrall of government. Your parent is in the thrall of government because they can't work, don't want to work, weren't educated because they went to public school, maybe dropped out, whatever. And so they're on welfare, food stamps, all the rest. The child is undisciplined, of course, no father figure. And so therefore, and only one parent. So therefore, the child is unruly and then declared to have attention deficit disorder. So then the child gets put on medications, and for the rest of his or her life, the child believes they're somehow mentally disabled. Who does that benefit? Benefits government. Benefits the pharmaceutical companies, which garner billions and billions of dollars in profits by giving our children psychotropic medications. And so you have a society, you have a government which promotes parasitism, in which the parasite is protected and benefited. When I say parasite, I'm not talking about poor people. I'm talking about the rich people. I'm talking about the rich people in General Motors and Chrysler. They were bailed out by George Bush. I'm talking about the rich people in Bank of America and Wells Fargo. They were bailed out by Barack Obama or OIG or the AIG. Forget about the OIG. The AIG. They were bailed out by the government. I'm talking about those rich people. I'm talking about the funneling of taxpayer dollars to Pfizer and Glaxo, General Electric, Boston Scientific, and all these other medical supply companies and pharmaceutical supply companies, which are enriched through government policies. Speaking of government policies, we just have this travesty where the United States government is sending our most modern weaponry, Abrams tanks, and fighter jets to Egypt. Egypt, which is busy killing off its Coptic Christians. Egypt, which is a country in turmoil, a country of barbarians, created by the League of Nations. We are selling them our most sophisticated weaponry. Why? Well, the blather is to so they'll remain friends. Well, who needs friends like that? Of course, the real reason is that the American arms manufacturing companies need to sell weapons to entities other than the United States in order to make a profit. And since they've bought off pretty much every politician in Washington, D.C., then the United States gives weapons to unstable and unscrupulous and un-American nations such as Saudi Arabia, such as Egypt, all in the name of profit. Speaking of profit, let's take a look at China. China was a backwater, third world nation until Richard Nixon came along and Bill Clinton came along and George Bush came along and decided that they were going to take a country which hates the United States and American ideals and develop a relationship with them so that we could benefit from slave labor. And I'm going to explain that here in a second. First thing is we need to realize that China could not even build an airplane until Richard Nixon came along. None of their weaponry worked. All their missile guidance systems sent their own rockets into their own cities. But thanks to George Bush and Bill Clinton and Richard Nixon, so it's bipartisan, you can see, they sold or gave the most modern American technology to China, which is now the most powerful military, coincidentally, in the Far East, and is now threatening every one of its neighbors. In return, we benefit from their slave labor. The American population has been impoverished through government policy. American manufacturing base has disappeared. Everybody seems to think that's just some normal evolution. The American manufacturing class has disappeared because of a combination of regulations by government, high taxation, union thuggery, and other policies which have made it impossible for an American manufacturer to compete with the slave labor manufacturers of overseas. So what the United States American companies did, because of the attorneys suing them for everything that they've made, because of the government regulating them into having to be more expensive, into forcing the utilization of union labor, which raised the cost of everything being built, and taxes and everything else. And so American companies moved overseas to take advantage of slave labor. Why does the American government need slave labor? Because if American manufacturing was allowed to exist, it would cost more to buy goods in the United States than by buying goods from overseas, because overseas goods are made by slave labor. Because the American has been impoverished, if the average American consumer was required to buy American manufactured products at the unnecessarily elevated costs that they engender, we could not afford to buy anything. We couldn't buy anything: cell phones, televisions, automobiles. So by using slave labor created goods, we're able to purchase products at a much lower price, which keeps the American people happy because now they can buy their stuff at much lower prices, even though it was made by slave labor. We put that aside. We're an idealistic nation, ready to condemn the Nazis for what they did. But we don't mind benefiting off slave labor ourselves as long as we don't have to see it. And so in the United States today, try and find a product not made in China. The other day, I went to buy a camera because my previously made in China camera broke right away because it's cheaply made. And so I went into the store and I said, I want a camera not made in China. So we looked at Nikon, Japanese company, all the cameras made in China. Forget it. Samsung, Korean company, looked for that. Everything made in China. And we looked at every single possible company, Canon, Vivitar, whatever, everything made in China. And I found it kind of incongruous that a Japanese company would be using Chinese labor to make a Japanese camera. I found it kind of odd. But then again, when I was in Mexico trying to buy a cap in Cancun, I could not find a cap, little baseball cap, with Cancun written on it. I couldn't find one not made in China. I went from store to store. I looked from manufacturer to manufacturer. And here in a country of Mexico, which one would have thought would have been low-cost labor, even so, it was not low-cost enough to prevent the distributors of goods of buying goods from China. So you go into Walmart or Kmart, you want to buy some clothes, it's all made in China or Malaysia or Indochina or Indonesia or somewhere not the United States using slave labor. And so we buy our clothes made by slave labor and our cell phones made by slave labor and our iPods made by slave labor and our gym shoes made by slave labor. We don't think about it because it's got a nice sounding name on it. Nike, Apple. Oh, these are American companies. American companies don't use slave labor. Well, they most assuredly do. And for no other reason than to maximize their profits. And the United States government aids and abets all that because it helps the American government keep the people docile because they can go out and buy their goods made by slave labor at a price they can afford despite all the thievery and theft and stealing the government has done from the American people. And that's the way we are today. So China is now the second largest economy in the world, gaining on the United States, which is stagnated. And everybody thinks that China is a real power. But China would collapse today if the United States did two things. That's all it would have to do. You're worried about China? You can end your worry today simply by the United States government doing two things. One, embargo all goods coming from China, and the China manufacturing base would essentially collapse. And then defaulting on all the bonds that China holds of U.S. bonds, which would, of course, right away eliminate $1 trillion or so from the Chinese account. China would collapse immediately. China is a direct threat to the United States, and it harbors no secret that it does have nothing but enmity towards the United States. But why won't the United States do that? Because the United States government exists for the rich and for itself, and couldn't care less about the 290 million or 300 million average American citizens. couldn't care less. If you don't believe that, look at our Veterans Administration's hospitals, look at our school systems, look at our pedophile teachers, look at our everything else you want to look at. And if you, Americans, government couldn't care less about the American people. The American people are unable to serve government, then the American people are of no use to the government whatsoever. So, as in most countries today and throughout history, it is time the American people came to realize the American government does not represent the American people. It represents the rich and the American government. And I can assure you that the rich are as populated in the Democrat Party, representing the Democrat Party as much as the Republican Party. The Democrat Party and Republican Party only exist to benefit the rich, the wealthy, the well-to-do, the contributors, the friends and cronies and relatives of politicians. That's the only reason that they exist. That is why selling of weapons, modern weapons, to Egypt, a country of barbarians, actively killing its Christian population, that openly espouses hatred for the United States and the American way of doing things. That the government does that because it doesn't care about the American people or what America stands for. It is nothing but an oligarchy of the wealthy that exists for its own benefit, that seeks to enslave the population, and in order to stay in power, does so through force and propaganda, making us believe through the indoctrination disseminated through the system of public education, through the mass media, and through every arm of government. The government is good, and you cannot exist without government. Well, the little secret is that not only can you exist without government, you can exist a lot better without government. And it's time to take a break. 710 KRV Talkback with Dr. Lawrence Gelman. Hold my microphone. 1-800-580-8255, 1-800-580-TALK, streaming live on KURV.com. All right, we're back. 710 KURV. Let's take a look at the natural history of government. All countries are founded by ideologues, people who believe in a certain cause or ideology. Doesn't really matter what ideology is, but that's how countries are founded. But and of course, if there's a takeover of the government or a overthrow of the existing government, then the professed new ideology, whatever the ideology is, it could be it could be dictatorship. The ideology is that a dictator should rule the country, or that a king should rule the country, or it should be a communist country, or a fascist country, or a democratic republic. Regardless, it doesn't matter what the ideology is at the initiation of a new government, whether it's a new country created or whether a new government created through the overthrow of the old government. It really doesn't matter. What is important is to understand the psychology. So countries are created by ideologues, people who have a certain set of beliefs, whatever those beliefs happen to be. As time goes on and the founders of a nation disappear for one reason or another, they're replaced by a political class. The political class can espouse an ideology, but it is rare that they believe in an ideology. They espouse an ideology to lend credibility to their continuing on in the name of the previous ideologues. But as a change in the psychology of the people that come forward. In general, once the ideologues have passed on, the people that take over are politicians. They are not ideologues. They believe in government for its own sake. And so if you have a dictatorship, it's passed on to another dictator, regardless of what that person feels is correct or not, they believe in government. And therefore, if the government is based upon dictatorship, then that is the way they continue the process of government. Not because they necessarily believe in dictatorship, but they believe in government. And so what takes preeminence, what takes control, is the political class, not the ideology. It is a political class that exists for its own sake. Government no longer exists to promote an ideology. It exists for its own sake. Governments fall once it becomes aware that the government is not existing according to ideology, but to its own, for its own sake. Once the people come to realize that is what has happened. That is why all established governments are so able to function so well with each other. Why the United States, which professes to be a freedom-loving, democratic, constitutional democratic republic, why we can get along with a communist Soviet Union, a communist Red China, a dictatorship as in Venezuela. That is how we're able to do that, because politicians are politicians. They're all pretty much the same. A politician goes into politics in order to impose his or her will on people. Now, an ideologue wants to do the same thing, but an ideologue wants to impose a certain ideology upon the people. The politician wants to impose government upon the people. There's a difference. There's a difference there. So the politician exists to impose government upon people. The ideologue goes into government and politics to impose ideology. But it's a rare instance when ideology can be passed on, because the creation of a nation, the creation of a government, is different than the maintenance of a nation or a government. It's a different kind of person. It's a different kind of person that exists in each stage. And the longer a government stays in existence, the more managerial its leadership becomes, but with the intent of imposing government on the people. Now disconnected from ideology. The United States is a perfect example. The ideology of the founding cannot be found anywhere in our government today. Oh, there's lip service. We talk about freedom and the Constitution and democratic republic, but there's no freedom in this country. There's no Constitution in this country anymore. Just because you're allowed to go to the grocery store without a policeman watching you doesn't make you free. In the Soviet Union, most people went about their business doing their job. Yes, if you were a dissident or something, they knocked you off. They came to your house at night. But for the vast majority of people, they just functioned. I mean, obviously they didn't have much. They lived in misery. But as long as misery was universal, they went along with it. Like in Cuba, universal misery. How long has that been going on? So as long as everybody's miserable, the population tends to tolerate it. And so government exists for itself. And that's an important thing to remember when we're looking at our government, that it exists primarily for itself, which is why government never really shuts down. Oh, they talk about it, but neither party would dare let government shut down, because they're all part of the government. So they may The Republican may not like the Democrat because the Democrat is in power and the Republican wants to be in power, and then vice versa when the situation and environment changes. But the fact of the matter is that when it comes to promotion of government, both sides are on the same side. The American people that are left out. Now, let's talk about the misappropriation of funds. Most people, when asked if they have enough, will say they don't. Most people, not all. Criminals never have enough. Criminals never have enough. Presidents of Mexico never have enough. Why did Madrid or Portillo or Echeverria, why do they have to steal $3 billion, $4 billion? $1 billion not enough? $500 million not enough? Can't make ends meet? Stealing $500 million can't make ends meet? I think most of us can make ends meet even with a paltry sum of $100 million. Why do they have to steal $3 billion? Because criminals never have enough. Never have enough. Never enough gold. Never enough lucre. Our politicians are the same. Why is it they stay in office forever? They leave when they don't even, when their brains go. They still continue on when their brains go. But, you know, they leave when they're decrepit or dead. Why do they linger on forever? Because they're interested in the power. That's all. They just love the power. They never have enough power. Remember, the reason you have, why do politicians, why did Bloomberg, who's a multi-billionaire, want him to be mayor? The mayor doesn't pay anything. You want to be mayor for power. Remember, money is only the conduit to power. The power to buy something. I mean, if you could go and buy whatever you wanted or take whatever you wanted without money, you don't need money. The reason you have money so you can buy what you want. So if you have power to get what you want, buy what you want, that supersedes money. So you wonder, gee, why does a multimillionaire or a billionaire want to be a politician making $100,000 a year or $200,000 a year? Because they don't care about the money at that stage. They want the power. Because a billionaire cannot force the people of New York City to do what he wants, but the mayor can. And there's a difference. That's the important distinction. And so, can a politician have enough power? No. A politician cannot have enough power. Always want more power. Like people want more money, a politician wants more power. They've gone one step beyond. And so therefore, there'll never be enough money. You can print all you want. There'll never be enough. There'll never be enough for these people because they cannot be satiated. They're gluttonous. They never have enough. That is why they're all maniacs for their physical pleasures. I mean, these congressmen and senators, I mean, these people are as hedonist as they come. They would make the Roman orgies seem like a bunch of pikers compared to what our senators and congressmen do on a daily basis. Are you aware that the average senator in personal expenditures costs the American taxpayer $10 million a year? Just in what they spend on their own personal stuff. $10 million a year, flying around one country to the next, doing what they want to do, getting what they want to get. That's what they cost. It's a nice lifestyle, don't you think? So, and the power that goes along with it, the power associated with it. So that's all that it's about. So there's never going to be enough. So there's never going to be an end to the deficit because there's never enough. I mean, when you can print your own money, imagine if you were a crook printing your own money. My gosh. You know why the government goes after counterfeiters? I mean, who counterfeits more money than the government? What is counterfeit anyway? Counterfeit is not legitimate money, currency, paper. Well, when you're printing money without collateral, without anything to back it up. How's that different from counterfeiting? Same thing. Where the government really gets upset is when you have independent counterfeiters, because the government is a bunch of professional counterfeiters, and they don't tolerate these amateurs getting in on the game. Counterfeiting is like in the old days, the king's deer. You can be a starving serf, and the king can have more deer than he and his clan can eat in a generation. But woe unto the peasant or the serf that kills a king's deer to feed his starving family, because that serf and his family will be killed. So woe unto the counterfeiter who gets in on the king's game of counterfeiting. Counterfeiting is owned by the government, not by so no regular person better counterfeit, because that's the way the aristocracy thinks. So it's not a question of waste of money. It's a question of misappropriation of money. It is a question of malfeasance purposely done in order to benefit the few at the expense of everybody else. Nobody on Medicaid is rich, nor very few. People getting food stamps aren't rich. Most on Medicare aren't rich. But Medicare spends $550 billion a year. Medicaid spends about $600 billion a year. Or maybe it's like a little less, maybe 500. Food stamps, where are we at with food stamps? $60 billion a year? What about public education? How many billions are spent there? My gosh, who knows how many billions are spent there? People going to public school rich? No. People on Medicaid rich? No. People on Medicare rich? No. Somebody's getting rich. People on food stamps rich? Nah. Somebody's getting rich. You want to know who they are? Look at the stock market. That's who's getting rich. If you're kind of wondering why the stock market, with 8% unemployment, with a stagnated economy, with a declining manufacturing base, population of illiterates, why is the stock market going up, approaching all-time highs? Because the stock market doesn't talk about the American people. The stock market is a reflection on the profitability of the big corporation and the government. And what the stock market and people who invest in the stock market understand is that as long as government is going to support big business and big labor at the expense of everybody else, and will do whatever is necessary to save big business and big labor, then big business and big labor will prosper, and the stock market will go up. Apple, pretty successful stock. Where do they make their stuff? It's all made in China. Walmart, pretty successful stock. Where do they buy all their stuff? Malaysia, China, that's where they buy it all. American companies, on the surface, look like American companies. How American are they? Oh, they supply a few jobs for some office clerks, people who man their warehouses. Where's all the big money? Big money's in the hands of the rich. Not in the greeter, of course, in the hands of the rich. American companies buy all their stuff overseas, make all their stuff overseas. American companies, stock market, pretty profitable. Stocks have done pretty well over the years. What about your average independent small business person? They have their, they on a stock exchange? No, they're not on a stock exchange. Anyone protecting them? No. Government tax policy? Who do they go after? Government regulations? Who do they go after? Government taxes? Who do they go after? Who can't hire rich tax attorneys or accountants to protect you from government regulations and taxes? Who what small businessman can make laws which benefit the rich and penalize the not so rich? Very few small businessmen can do that. Big business hates small business. Big business hates competition. Costs money. Have to do research. Have to build a better product. Have to produce things which will last. Big business doesn't like that. Big business wants profit. And the big business does not want competition. Why did the government save General Motors and Chrysler? What the heck was so important about saving them? How many small businesses that can't compete go out of business every year? How many small businesses go out of business because of government regulations, government costs, taxation? How many? A hell of a lot. No one seems to care about them. But the fat cats, unions, United Auto Workers, Chrysler and General Motors. Does the country need to have Chevys or Cadillacs? I think we do quite well without it. Did quite well before they were around and would do quite well after. Companies have come and gone. American automobile manufacturers have come and gone. No one cares about that. Replace the old with the new. Isn't that the way it's supposed to be? But no, the government goes out there and salvages poorly run General Motors, poorly run Chrysler. And now we're given the blather that all functioned. I like this nonsense with AIG. AIG lost, I don't know, $100 billion, who knows? Borrowed, who knows how many hundreds of billions. Now they have a commercial saying that they paid it all back. Well, I'm a criminal, and I can pay back money if I just go steal more money. So I don't know the specifics about AIG, but it would be hard for me to imagine that a company so grossly incompetent as to go bankrupt in a sweet deal industry like they have with insurance, all of a sudden got smart. Those same guys who drove that company into bankruptcy, what are we talking about, 5 years ago? The same people, they got smart all of a sudden. I'll bet you anything you want that those companies made back their money through some kind of sweetheart deals with the United States government in which they profited. That's how Goldman Sachs always does it. That's how Citicorp always does it. They do this incompetent investing. When they make money on investments, they keep it. When they lose money on investments, the American taxpayer covers their losses. Sweet deal. You think the crooks that ran these banks into the ground a mere 4 or 5 years ago, and they're still there, somehow got smart and are now making a profit? Don't you believe it? That money is your tax dollars, or the government is funneled to them, some kind of shell game pretense that they all of a sudden became smart. The incompetent all of a sudden became competent somehow, magically, overnight, after they got bailed out by the U.S. government. Don't think so. So, who represents the American people, or at least the productive American people? Well, nobody really. The government wants to take away your guns, which are there for your self-defense against government, if you're wondering why government wants to take away your guns. You have the Democrats all out there who want to take away your guns, who are the Republicans sitting on their hands. So you have the government trying to take away your guns, and the private sector, NRA, whatever, trying to help you. You have the government taking all your money in taxes. Democrats want all your money, so you'll be a slave, because Democrats are the party of slavery. Republicans sit on their hands. The private people trying to help you out. Government wants to give free abortions to everybody. Democrats are all out there saying abort your child, we'll pay you to do it. Republicans sitting on their hands. It's the private sector that is trying to prevent the mass slaughter of innocent human beings. without a voice. And so who represents the average producing American middle class? Well, no one in the government, I can assure you, neither Democrat nor Republican. The Democrats are a bunch of racists who want to enslave everybody, who think thinks everybody is not capable of taking care of themselves. And Republicans are a bunch of liars who are a bunch of whining and unprincipled politicians who haven't the slightest idea what the Constitution stands for, are only interested in staying in power and give a pretense and lip service to being somehow different and distinct from the Democrat Party, but in reality are exactly the same. The political parties exist for no other reason than to help Goliath beat up on David. And those of us who are Davids understand that quite well. The country is headed down the path to perdition because it is in the hands of politicians. And the last thing that a country needs is to be in the hands of politicians, because there's no lower form of human life than a politician. They are arrogant, they are narcissists, and they have a very limited intelligence. And as time goes by, because people who want to enslave really are not what you would call human beings. People who want to enslave other people are barbarians. And barbarians are not noted for their intelligence. And the longer a politician stays in power, the less connected to the reality the politician is, because they do not connect what they do to the effect of what they do. They are completely disconnected from reality and are illogical and barbaric. This is 7 at KRV, Talkback, Dr. Gelman, home of the microphone. Back after this short commercial break. (710) KRV Talkback, Dr. Lawrence Gelman, home of the audio microphone, and we're back. 1-800-580-8255, 1-800-580-TALK, streaming live on KURV.com. I don't watch the news anymore. Why bother? There's nothing there. It's just propaganda and indoctrination. I don't think anybody really watches the news anymore. I don't think anybody watches anything of any value anymore. No, I think I've had it with the politics today. We've discussed it before. We'll discuss it again. Let's talk about something different. The world is full of beautiful things. And the most beautiful things in the world are made by man. What? Mountain ranges are kind of neat, and forests and all that. But give me a cathedral or a great work of art or a beautiful statue. There's a museum in Rome, and it's called the Galleria dei Borghesi. Borghesi is like, I know some family, rich family, what used to be there. And Borghesi Park, it's in Borghesi Park, like Central Park, okay, something like that. Okay. And within it, there's this museum. And I think it's probably the best museum I've ever been in. It's small. It's actually what used to be a mansion. One of the Medici family had it. Of course, like all things, the government took control of it over time. And in it are probably the greatest sculptures you'll ever see in your life. There's one in there that's called Apollo and Daphne, where Apollo, gods are like politicians. They're always trying to rape women. So Apollo's trying to rape a Daphne, and to protect her, another god converts her into a into a tree or some other plant life. And this statue is, I guess it's about maybe 10 feet high or so. And it's an amazing, amazing structure. It is a snapshot. It's a snapshot of Apollo grasping Daphne, and part of her body already turning into a plant. So the ends of her fingers are turning into leaves, and other parts of her body are turning into it. And so, but the ability of the person doing I think it was Bernini who did the sculpture is it's amazing. The grasping of the hand and entering the flesh of Apollo's hand into the flesh of Daphne, as if it were real flesh and not stone, marble. I mean, think about it. And the drapery, the clothes, how it looks, how they fit, and how they seem to flow. Even though it's carved in stone, it's as if it's happening live in front of you. The expressions on the faces. Now, in this museum, there isn't a square inch that doesn't have a form of art. If you walk into each room, from floor to ceiling is art. The floor either has engraving, mosaics, design. The walls are painted or they're sculptures. And there's a neat interplay of the sculpture and the painting. In other words, you look at where the ceiling, and it's usually curved where the wall hits the ceiling, and you'll see a painting of a marble statue, and then a little bit farther, there'll be a statue, which is a real statue. And you have this interplay of art forms mimicking one to the other, until sometimes you're not even sure if you're looking at something that's carved into the wall, or is painted and looks like it's carved, and vice versa. And every square inch of this place has art, painting, sculpture, mosaic, any art form you can possibly imagine. And of course, the architecture itself, the architecture of the structure, the way the ceilings, the dome ceilings, and the paintings in the ceilings, and all the molding and the other art, and the molding of wood, of plaster, of marble. And every single square inch of this place has got these most amazing works of art. And it's definitely worth seeing if you ever go to Rome, which I would advise anyone to do. In Rome, you have St. Peter's Cathedral. There's nothing I can say to describe what this place is like, and any of you who have been there know what I'm talking about. It's enormous and gargantuan. What word can I say? But but it is so well done, as large as it is, you don't really have an awareness of its immensity. If you go up the elevator to where the dome starts, not the highest point, but where they have an elevator and where you can walk around the ring of a balcony, and you look down, and then you realize just how big this place is, because the people look very, very small. There are statues outside St. Peter's, and looking from the ground, they look like a normal-sized statue, 8 or 10 feet. But when you see that the people standing next to it, that those statues are 40 feet high. There are mosaics which are so well done that you'll think they're paintings, and they'll appear to be paintings. And you need like a high zoom camera, because they won't let you get close enough to the mosaic. With a high zoom camera, I mean, they'll let you within 5 or 10 feet, but it still looks like a painting. But with a high zoom camera, you can see each little piece put together so well that you cannot see the divisions. And the floor, you look at the floor, it has all these marble inlays. And it's just one thing after another. And for me to try to describe it is impossible. You have to kind of be there. And I would advise everyone to be there. And why are we talking about this? Because these works that I'm talking about, the cathedral, the statues, the mansion, are 600 years old, 700 years old, 500 years old, long, long time ago. And it's important, I think, for us to realize what man can create, the creative ability of man when allowed to create unimpeded. These amazing works of art, nothing of which exists or made today. Compared to what is being produced today, it's a joke. But that's because artists are no longer really artists. They're just weirdos. And so the talent is no longer, well, I don't have to tell anyone this. I mean, with Lady Gaga's running around, talent is not really recognized, is it? You have concert pianists that can't make enough money to continue their craft or trade or whatever, or their skill. But you have Lady Gaga, who's a disgusting barbarian, making millions and millions of dollars every year, catering to the barbarians in our society, which apparently is now an ascending class. But you can thank the government for that. The government is the one that provides money to barbarians so they can indulge in their barbarities. Forget about that. Let's go back to where we were. And so when you see these great works of art, they're definitely worth seeing. It's like if I go to Rome or wherever, I don't travel that much, but when I do go, I always go back to the same places. I say, well, why? How many times do you need to see the same stuff? Well, I don't live there. And if I go once every 2 or 3 years, now I want to go see these magnificent things which you cannot see anywhere else. These magnificent works of art. Now here locally, the barbarians that run our city council spent $24 million on this travesty called a library, which is the largest single-story library in the state of Texas. As far as square footage, I understand. And I also understand it's going to cost $2 million a year to maintain this joke of a library. Who uses library anywhere anyway? I mean, I keep asking people, hey, have you seen a new library? I said, no. And it's like, 40 years ago, if you said, have you seen the city library? Everybody would say yes, because that's where you had to go to, for research and books and all that. Now, of course, everything's on the internet. Whatever's in the library is outdated by the time it's delivered. So anyone else, I would advise people to go look in the library to see how your city council wastes our money. Okay, government wasting money is nothing new. And but people are not interested in performance anymore, are they? They're only interested in perception. Performance means nothing, I guess. But when I think about the money that was spent on that library and whatever else our city council wastes its money on, which is our money, actually. You know what we could have done with $24 million? We could have had a great museum. $24 million is a lot of money. But we could have the city could have built a first-class museum for the benefit of the people, for the real benefit of the people in seeing something that they couldn't see otherwise. You want to look up an article, you go on the internet, you look it up. You don't need to go to the library. You want to read a book, you go on the internet and buy it on Amazon or something. You don't need to go to the library. You won't find it there anyway. But a great work of art? Yeah, you can see it on the internet. But it's not the same as seeing it in person. A great sculpture? Yeah, you can see it on the internet. But it's not the same as seeing it in person. And that's my point about my little European travelogue. You can see the Mona Lisa in a book, or a statue by Bernini in a book, or St. Peter's, or the Louvre, or in a book. or the Hermitage in a book, or the Russian Museum in a book. You can see that in a book. See the paintings in a book. Go online and look at it online. It's not the same. My wife once said, we're looking at some photos of some pictures that we took of the cathedral in Florence. Perfectly nice photo. And she said, why isn't this photo remind me very much of the cathedral? Because the cathedral, how you can compare a 4x6 photo to this brilliant work of art in person, this massive, brilliant white and green marble work of art with all the statues and all that. No possible way. Cannot be done. These things are so beautiful, it's almost impossible to believe they were created by a human hand. So this city could have had a great museum with great works of art for the money that was wasted on that library. God knows how much other money is wasted. Because great art is hard to find here or in many communities. You want to go to New York, okay. But do we need to go to New York to see great art? You could have had great art here. But that would have required a city council with vision. But they don't. They have no vision. They're just a bunch of managers wasting money. They really don't know what it is that makes a city great. They only know how to pay the bills for insurance or electricity. God knows what other, I don't even know what they do. I don't know what any of these guys do except waste money. So it really kind of is irritating when they so readily will waste money. I mean, that library is like a perfect example of completely wasted money. 100%. You've been in there, the carpet needs to be replaced. It's a good hangout for the work for food people and for other people who want an air-conditioned place to use their own laptops and all that. Rather than that, it's not a library, not even in the sense of a library of the 1950s. It's an ugly building. It's like a warehouse. I don't know how they spent $24 million. I'm sure it was all justified somehow. And that's what the government does with your money. It misappropriates it completely. So we could have had a library, or we could have had a museum. We could have had a museum, a great museum. Could have bought great works of art. A lot of them. Could have bought 100 or more great works of art. Great. I mean great works of art for the cost of that library. And it would have been something for the people to go see and send their children to go see so that they would realize there's something other than Lady Gaga in this world. But if you're never exposed to it, you're never exposed to human creativity, what can be created, and the beauty that can be created, and all you're exposed to is Lady Gaga and Barack Obama, then you have no idea what humans are really able to accomplish. And if you're never exposed to it, then all you got to do is, take cocaine and shoot up heroin for the, that's it. And drink yourself drunk every weekend and eat a bunch of Fritos. There's more to life than that. There is greatness in humankind. There is greatness in human beings. But you're not going to find it in the mayor. You're not going to find it in the city council or in the governor or in Austin or any other state capital, and certainly not in Washington in the Capitol buildings. You're not going to find it there. You're going to find it in other places, which are rarely discussed, never seen on TV, and are really kept hidden from most of the American people. So, if you have the opportunity, any way you can, I remember go visit some of these great places, and the reason they're great is because they're considered great is because they are great. If you go to, when I first went, or thinking about going to Europe a number of years ago, when I first contemplated that, I didn't think there'd be much to it. I figured it would, just something you got to do. So when you're at a little party, and somebody says, "Oh, they went to the Louvre, or they saw the Eiffel Tower, or they went to the Vatican," you say, "Oh, yeah, so did I." So you could say you did. But I figured going once was enough. There was really nothing worth. I mean, what was the big deal? Seen big buildings, seen big churches, seen paintings. Well, let me assure you, friends, let me assure you that if you will, there's nothing anyone can say, there's no description you can read, there's no photo that you can see, there's nothing on television that can prepare you for what you will see when you go. And if you have a heart of a human being at all, then what you see will take your breath away. And it'll make you proud because human beings created that. Yeah, a mountain range is neat and a forest is neat, and you look at it and the immensity and it has a certain aspect to it. But I have seen more beauty and more creativity in a little painting of a little scene than all the mountain ranges put together. We have a phone call. Vanity? Okay, we have, do we have a phone call? Yes? Vanity from, am I pronouncing this right? From Far?
Yes, from Far.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not, I know I'm pronouncing Far right. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your
yes,
name
Vanilla,
correct.
yes, you pronounced it right.
Oh, okay.
I've been called Valentine and Vaseline, so when you do it right, I appreciate it.
Oh, it was just a lucky guess.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for calling. 710, what do you have to say?
Yes, there are several small towns like Brackettville and Del Rio that have very active libraries. They're small libraries, but they have art programs in the summertime for the kids. And I'm a self-taught artist, and when I began, it was the Del Rio library that afforded me. I didn't know what I was looking for. I just knew I wanted to learn art, and so I'd go in and look at all these wonderful books, and some of them were garbage, and some of them were wonderful. But I learned, and now I'm teaching. And while I was in Del Rio, I had two art teachers, elementary and middle school, that knew a lot about art, but they didn't know how to paint. And so they came to my classes, and we learned the basics, which no one learns anymore. In the schools, they give them some tools and spend a lot of money on the colors and stuff, but they don't tell them what to do with them. And it's really sad because all that is being lost. And most of the kids do cartoons with hard edges and no shadows and ugly stuff that, it's great for the comics, but it's not art. So I wanted to tell you I agree with you, but I think that if we could just get our cities to use that huge building to have some art projects and music projects and everything else, especially in the summer, it might make it a little bit more profitable.
Well, I'm not sure looking for a profit in it, but I don't know why profitable for the people, not for right in their education.
Yeah.
But I don't know why you're surprised that they won't teach art when they won't even teach how to read. It's not
absolutely.
It's not in the government's interest to have a educated population. It's in their interest to have a bunch of drones. And the thing is that I know there's people out there, such as yourself, essentially on your own, that do these kinds of enlightening projects. But the thing is, the government just takes your money, but what does it provide you to help you?
They're a stumbling block.
Yeah, yeah. Not only are they don't help, they actually get in the way, don't they?
Right, and I really wanted to comment also on the computers. There are only so many colors that you can get on a computer. Of course, God has a. He's the only one that can put yellow and blue together and not make green. But you can really do beautiful work with the paints that are available today that are not transferable to the computer. They just aren't.
Well, I believe that, but you see, the problem is people like you are not making the decisions as to where the money is spent.
Oh, I know, but can you tell me how we can?
No, I can't. I can't, because that would be like, what's the answer to the problem? I mean, we know what needs to be done, but it can't be done because the people who are in charge have a different kind of mentality. I mean, most people in charge are not people who are not creative type people. Okay, they're more like gangsters. Okay,
well, they're bricks. They all look alike.
Yeah, and it's a sad thing because there are a lot that there's so much that could be done. They all talk about infrastructure and all that as if all that money wasn't already allocated and stolen. But the thing is that there are so many things that could be done, even in our smaller communities. Now, like, let me ask you, like San Antonio, for example. I mean, why is San Antonio does not have a single, in my opinion, first-class museum, a city of that size?
Their museum is just old stuff, and they are very reluctant to change because they get a lot of people that come through, and they're reluctant to change and to upgrade it in any way.
But I wonder why. I mean, why are they so? I mean, why you would think
fear. Most people are so fearful; they're afraid. One of my teachers said, "Danilee, be brave and use more paint." And this is in our life also. And then the things, what you're doing on the radio, be brave and use more paint in everything that you do. In cooking, try using all the spices. In life, do the daring thing. Be a rock that is made by God that has a different shape, not a brick like everybody else.
Well, that's a very good way of looking at things, and I agree 100%. But of course, that's being a liberated person, and government does not like liberated people. They want people to just follow in line and be sheep. You go to the airport now, and now we're just sheep, aren't we? You get in line, listen to the Big Brother speaking over the loudspeaker, and just get in line and show your identification and be sheep. And we accept it all. So, well, I'm glad there are people like you around, but the unfortunate thing is I really don't see it in the new generation.
Well, if you ever come up with some solutions to all these miserable problems, I will be the first one to get in line behind you.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I spoke with the city manager here, and I asked him, basically I told him, what kind of an idiot are you to spend $24 million in that library? And he said, well, we got 110 computers out of it. Well, what was that, $250,000 per computer? This is the kind of people we have running our cities. But if I ever have the answer, if I ever have a way of implementing the answer, I'll give you a call.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for calling. Okay. Bye. All right. We have Jack. You haven't called for a while, Jack. 7 KRV. What's on your mind today?
Dr. Gelman, the discussion of art, of great art, caused me. I mean, it just stirred me so much. If we look at great art, great literature, going all the way back to the even before the Egyptians. We look at the Egyptian art. We look at the ancient Hebrew art and literature. We look at the writings. Today we have the Old Testament, we have the New Testament. Throughout the ages, for thousands of years, civilization was signified to a great degree by its art, by its literature. And what you find also is that when the barbarians come into a civilization and destroy it, whether the barbarians are from within, as within the Roman Empire, the end of the Roman Empire, or at the beginning of the Roman Empire when the barbarians were coming in, they would destroy destroy the art, destroy the literature.
Right, but that's the same thing. That's what the Soviets did. That's what all of these. That's what they did in where the heck was that? Afghanistan. When they was that where they destroyed all that art from the those Buddhas, those really from 1,000-year-old Buddhas. I think was that Afghanistan. I think. But you're exactly right. They'll go in there and destroy culture because they want to destroy culture because they want to be in power. If you're a government wants to be in power, you want to eliminate any vestiges of a previous culture because you don't want to give the people any evidence that there was something that maybe was better than what they have right now. And you know, you don't have to be a trained artist or a musician or anything to be able to appreciate beauty. But I can tell you something: when you see beauty in art, you don't have to have really much training. But what you do need is exposure. You need exposure to levels of art in order to appreciate great works, and that exposure is denied. Is denied most Americans because the government doesn't want you to be beholden to government, and is really not interested in being aware of something other that is great that has got nothing to do with government. So I'm just telling you, and I think what could have been done with that money that they wasted on that library, it really makes. We could have had a better museum, anything in San Antonio by far, and probably one of the best museums in the United States, but it requires people with vision. And people with vision don't go into government. Narcissists go into government. Anything else?
Great art is an expression. The ancient Greeks said great art is an expression of truth and beauty. And the last thing that a totalitarian government wants the people to see is truth and beauty because they're lying to them.
Right. That's why government pays for its own art. It wants to create art sanctioned by government to give the government's point of view, which is why government art is garbage. You know, like in the Soviet Union and in the United States. And in the United States, government-promoted art is garbage. That's because that's what government can do. Jack, have to go to a break. 7th and KRV. Right. Thanks for calling. 7th and KRV, talk with Dr. Lawrence Gelman. We'll continue with our little travelogue after this break.
Are you ready for some football? Well, not until you get your party platters from Tony Roma's. Tony Roma's has great party platters to go, including the Roma Family Feast with chicken, ribs, sausage, corn on the cob, and coleslaw. Tony Roma's also has baby back and St. Louis rib platters and chicken tender and buffalo wing platters to go. So let everyone enjoy the big game and treat all your armchair quarterbacks to Tony Roma's party platters to go. Tony Roma's, North and South 10th Street, McAllen, and on the Expressway in Brownsville.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pam Puso. The communication is constant between authorities in southern Alabama and the man holding a 5-year-old boy in a homemade bunker.
He's also allowed us to provide coloring books, medication, toys.
Dale County Sheriff Wally Olson.
Officials won't discuss the nature of the negotiations and won't respond to any possible demands he may be making. They're also rotating shifts with all agencies and first responders on call.
Fox's Elizabeth Pran. Police say Jimmy Lee Dykes kidnapped the boy after killing a bus driver Tuesday. A family of 4 is dead in eastern Tennessee. Police in Irwin tell local media a man killed his wife, his 2 kids, then himself. Say goodbye to winter. That is, if you trust a groundhog.
Unbelievable, and Phil is always accurate.
Punxsutawney Phil did not see his shadow in Gobbler's Knob, Pennsylvania. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Your 710 KURV AccuWeather forecast. A blend of sun and clouds today with a high 75 to 79, then a mild night tonight with partly cloudy skies, low 56 to 62. Clouds and breaks of sun for tomorrow, high 76 to 80. Then a warm day Monday will see clouds and sunshine, high 77 to 82. I'm AccuWeather's Kevin Snyder, the Valley's official weather station, 710 KURV.
Audio streaming on KURV.com. Powered by South Texas Buick GMC, McAllen, Mission.
710 KURV is operated by our communications group.
Okay, we're back. 710 KRV Talkback with Dr. Lawrence Gelman. Many people are put off by traveling to Europe. They think it's going to be frightening. You don't know the language. Going to get lost. What's going to happen? Cost too much. Inconvenient, whatever. So I understand that exactly the way I felt. Because, oh my gosh, how am I going to get around? I'm going to be able, can't speak any of these languages. What else if I get lost over there? How am I going to find my way back? How, what if my stuff is stolen? What if whatever, it's going to be too expensive? But that's really not the case at all. You can, once you're in Europe, it's very inexpensive to get around, even airplanes. If you stay within a country, I have flown from from France to southern France for $60, okay? Trains cost nothing, and they have a very good train system over there. I don't want to get involved in this mass transit issues, but you go to any of their city, Rome, Florence, any of their major cities, you hop on a train. The trains go wherever you want every hour or so. You don't need to make a reservation. You don't need to go through security. Costs $7, $8 to go from one city to another. You can go from Rome to Florence, from Florence to other cities on the line, such as Lucca or Pisa. You can take a bus to other cities, like the ancient city of Siena. Siena is a city that has not changed in 500 or 600 years. Walking the streets of a medieval city with its old cathedrals and its old buildings, its cobblestone streets, its narrow streets, and all of its other structures, cathedrals, churches, museums, now even stores. Food is great, by the way. And if you avoid the tourist traps, it doesn't cost anything. I always do. I just go to the sandwich shop, get myself a panini, nice mozzarella cheese and tomato, $3, stuff like that. Yeah, you can go get a bowl of minestrone for $15 or $25 if you go to a fancy restaurant. I don't see any need for that. Actually, I always try to avoid it. You go into a regular restaurant in one of these cities, you end up stuck there for 2 hours because it takes so long to get through the meal that if you feel like sitting around for 2 hours, fine. I always like to keep moving. The hotels, and you can stay even regular hotels. I know there's hostels, but most adults don't want to do that. You can stay, there are many very inexpensive hotels, certainly less expensive than the United States if you really look around. And just walk the streets. Just walk the streets. I always advise to stay overnight in the city, so you don't have the pressure of going to have to catch a bus or a train or something. Stay overnight so you can walk the city at night, walk the city in the early morning. Because half the fun is just walking the streets of Florence or of Pisa or of Siena or of Rome or of, though in Rome you better be a little careful where you walk around. But in most other, but if you're in the tourist sections, you don't have to worry. And there's something nice about getting up in the morning, facing a new adventure. Even if it's a place you've been before, it's still an adventure. In our daily lives, we go about our daily routine activities. But it's nice for a week or two in a year to be able to get up in the morning and have adventure. I don't mean just not having to go to work. I mean going out and seeing something that you haven't seen before, or something that is really great. And it's easy to do, and you can travel all around. You can see all the major stuff you want to see in a couple of days. Even in Paris, yeah, you could spend a lifetime, I guess, and not see everything that you need to see there. But you can go see the Louvre and the Orsay, and go to the Sainte-Chapelle Chapel, Eiffel Tower, Notre Dame, and you can do that in a couple of days without too much of a rush, and then hop on the train and move over to Venice, take the overnight train, sleep on the train, go to Venice. It's an amazing place to see, a city with canals, an old city with all this brilliant architecture, and just walking the streets of Venice. Just walk down the streets of this old city. Stop in a church. And that's another thing. You don't have to just stop in. You don't have to make a plan if you want to walk the streets. You see a church, walk in. I was walking in one of the plazas in Rome a year ago or so. I had a tour guide. They don't cost very much. A tour guide for a day might cost $100. So you go a tour guide, and I walked past there's some statues, and I saw this church over on the side. Oh, no, don't bother going there. That's just a regular standard old church in Rome. Well, let me assure you, a standard old church in Rome is something to see. And I went in there. It was magnificent. It was all marble. Everything was marble. Floor, ceilings, walls, columns, statues. Everything was marble. It was beautiful. But I guess if you live in Rome all your life, maybe you think that's normal. Just driving around. If you don't want to drive, just hop on a bus or hop on a train. Go from here to there. It's fun to do. Doesn't cost much of anything. What are you worried about? You'll find your way back to the hotel. Don't worry about it. I always think, oh my gosh, if I get on this train, I'll get lost. Well, it's not like a train in Chicago where you end up in the wrong place and you're in real trouble. Over there, you just get back on, kind of look at the map, figure out how to get back. Kind of a nice adventure. Russia, Moscow, St. Petersburg. These places are great. Less expensive than a lot of places in Europe. Got beautiful museums. Nobody's there. You go into the Russian museum. I thought it was closed. Nobody was there. Brilliant. Amazing works. I mean, stuff you're never going to see anywhere else in the world. Doesn't cost much. Plan it out. Doesn't cost much. And also, don't tie yourself down having to be here in a day or there in a day. Okay? Be a little flexible. Stay overnight in the cities. Leave the next morning somewhere. Take the bus. Take the train. Go from here to there. You decide you want to go here instead of there, and you made a hotel reservation in one place, no problem. Call the hotel, cancel the reservation, call another hotel, make a reservation. It all seems so daunting. When I first did it, you'd be surprised how easy it is. Take your time just to look around. It's something to see. Hang out in the Vatican, walk around. Go to St. Peter's, go to the Vatican Museum. Walk around the square. Go to Paris. Walk from the Eiffel Tower to the Notre Dame. Go see Notre Dame. 600 years old. What you're seeing today, they saw 600 years ago. You want to have a time machine? You've got one. What you're standing in front of today, when you look at Notre Dame, people for hundreds of years have been looking at exactly the same thing you're looking at. There's your time machine. Walk down the streets, look at all the fountains, cross the bridges. Go to Florence, cross the bridges of Florence, wander through the town, seeing all the architecture. Stop in the church, any church. See the works of art, even if it's not in the guidebook. It's all there. It's all to be seen. It's all worth seeing. It's all very exciting. Definitely worth doing. So if you have an opportunity to go, take it. If you go with a church group, go with your church group. Any way you can, do it. I assure you, you'll never forget it. I assure you, it'll be something that you'll tell your children about or your parents. And it's always, it's just something that's worth doing. It's worth doing. Don't always need to be Philistine. Anyway, so here we have Pete, 7 KRV, Talkback. What's your comment, please?
Dr. Gelman.
Yes?
First off, I'm saying amen to an awful lot of what you're saying. A couple of points. One, great art by its very nature is rare. So logically, it's accumulated in specific spots where a lot of people can get to it. I don't think the Valley is a place on most people's beaten track. Secondly...
Right, yes. But I'm talking about the people of the Valley themselves. I'm not talking about bringing tourists in. But if you can buy great art, I mean great art, by the best artists of the 19th century. I don't mean the Monets, which are vastly overpriced, but I mean by the academic artists, which is really great art. And you can buy a great painting. It's not cheap, don't get me wrong.
Right.
for $250,000, $300,000, you can get great Renaissance art for $50,000, $75,000. Not cheap, don't get me wrong, but if I give you a budget of $24 million, you'd be surprised what you can get for $24 million.
With you, I have no doubt about it. The second point is that before getting to Europe, particularly the kids go on trips to Washington, New York, wherever with the schools, they need to put the museums on their itineraries as a way to heck, even Houston. Although the modern art in the Museum of Fine Arts, I think, is a bunch of garbage for the most part and a ripoff. But there's still some halfway decent stuff in there, even at the Whitty in San Antonio. But it's you start it with little baby steps. So instead of flying over to Europe on the first shot, get into the habit of hitting museums when you get out of the valley. And third, you hit it when you said stay in a town overnight, stay in a town for a few days. This is the way I've gotten to really get to know the people and the people more than the architecture and the art. You can kind of hit bang, bang, bang. But if you get to know the people and start talking to them and open up friendships, and here you get away from the beaten track of the tourist trade, and folks will open up. And one comment I overheard was about Americans: when they're bad, they're really rotten, and when they're good, they're really great. And this is the type of thing. And again, it's to open your mind and to again get off that rat race that you're doing a good job on that. But for the kids, particularly the high school kids, when they travel out on trips, for God's sake, hit the museums.
My wife told me sometime back, we go to Chicago, okay, and said, "Why don't you go look at the churches in Chicago?" I never thought about it. Amazing churches in Chicago. There's a church, I don't know if you ever get to Chicago, the church, St. Cantius Church, is a magnificent cathedral with it's been around 100 years or so. They have a full-size replica in marble of the Pietà that you see in St. Peter's, and they have other great architecture. And if you go to these big cities, Philadelphia, New York, I don't mean St. Patrick's, which of course is great, but I'm talking about they all have these churches with magnificent stained glass and statues and all the rest, which no one ever sees and no one ever thinks about because it's not in a formal museum. So if you ever go to Chicago, go to Mass at St. Cantius Church. I'm telling you, they have a great choir, and they'll have and it'll be something that you'll remember. It's a great place. But that's another thing is when you're traveling from one to a city like in Philadelphia is a city of nothing but criminals from the streets to the government, but it has great churches. It's got an enormous number of great churches with amazing stained glass and other things. I went to a church in Germantown. I looked it up online, and they had some great Tiffany windows in Germantown. So I took a cab out there, and I was nervous at every street corner because of all the derelicts, all the government-funded derelicts that hang out there. But in the church itself, it was okay, though the neighborhood was a little rough and magnificent. Organ like you cannot believe. I tell you, the Presbyterians, they love big stained glass and big organs. Every Presbyterian church that I have seen, the old ones, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, boy, they love big organs, big stained glass windows. Of course, they're all, the parishioners have all disappeared, so they have problems staying together. In Chicago, there's a church, 1900 South Michigan Avenue. It's open 2 hours a week on Sunday for Mass. They got the most magnificent stained glass windows and organ that you'll ever see anywhere. And nobody's there. You know, they have mass once a week, nobody's there. I'm not Presbyterian, but my wife insists if I go for that, I have to stay for a mass. It's what, you know, you just can't go there to look. You have to go stay for mass. So there's the American cities, of course, is all older stuff, but they all have these great hidden gems, which are pretty much ignored in the tourist books and, of course, and by the tour guides. But these older cities, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, and other older cities. And I like Houston too. Houston has, I agree with you, the Fine Arts Museum is really quite good in Houston. Really, really quite good. Their Modern Art Museum is the same garbage like every other modern art museum. In the United States, it's all pretty much garbage.
Well, one Sunday I was there in the Mies van der Rohe wing. There were a mess of people in there. And I was talking to the director, and he said, well, yeah, we need to get more people in here. I said, I know how you can do it. All of a sudden, he was all ears. Said, put the price tags on what you paid for this crap, and you'll have people come in.
Have you ever been to the Mark Rothko Chapel in Houston?
Out by Rice.
What is that? You know, black canvases and all that. This is art?
I don't know. I don't know what you call it.
Well, I was there, and I was like the only person there, and I remember we went into the place. It's you've been there, okay? So we walk in, and we sign in. They're all very solemn, very solemn. And then there's a custodian or whatever, is going to take us into the room, and so we walk through the glass door, make a turn around the corner, walk into a room. It was a six-sided, or I don't know how many sides. It was not a rectangle. It was a hexagon or octagon or something. And I thought the custodian was there because we saw all the works of the black canvases.
Mm-hmm.
So what I figured was, oh, well, this is a shroud, right? This guy is going to turn on a light or lift the shroud up, and beneath is going to be some great work of art. So the guy sits down in a chair, and I'm there with my daughter. We're kind of waiting for something to happen. And I think the most frightening thing is the kneeling pads they have in front of those paintings. Like, people actually kneel in front of that stuff.
Ouch.
They're not to sit on. They're not like little chairs. They're kneeling pads. So I walked over to a little alcove, and I thought maybe there's something here. And no, they just had a little storage place there. And so my daughter and I are kind of looking at each other, and all we're seeing is these black canvases around the room, which is like, which is garbage, okay? And this guy sells his paintings for $80, $100 million. And so I said, Rachel, so she says to me, is this it? I said, I don't know. Look at the little guidebook they gave you. So look in the guidebook, and yeah, that was it. Like 8 or 9 paintings of just canvas, and this is supposed to be like some kind of chapel. So that's modern art. Mark Rothko, the guy must be laughing in his grave. So that's what passes for modern art in our society. Talk about the emperor's clothes.
Yep.
But that's in you. But aside from that, in the Houston Museum of Fine Art, of which, of course, nobody's ever in there either, they have some really great 19th century and other era really great art. But I can't really agree that there's a lot of great art out there. I mean, not everything needs to be them. Okay, here's a perfect example of people. You go to the Louvre, okay? And everybody's got to go see the Mona Lisa, right? The most famous painting in the world. Well, to get to the Mona Lisa, you got to go traipsing all about the place. But they got signs every 15 feet, arrows, okay? Up escalators, down around rooms and all that. And then you get into the room, and you got to get into line to go past in front of the painting. Okay, it's a nice painting, whatever. All right. In a hallway, or they call it a gallery. To me, it's a hallway, but they call it a gallery. Where people go by. There are 5 or 6 Da Vinci paintings. And, Da Vinci has, how many paintings does Da Vinci have? 20? I mean, nothing, right? Most of them he didn't do much. They're lost, whatever. He doesn't have many. And then in this gallery, where they have the benches in the middle, you know what I'm talking about. And they had about 5 or 6 Da Vinci paintings.
And
I'm sitting there
just walking past.
Exactly. I'm trying to look at the paintings, and you have all these people, the same people who waited in line to see the Mona Lisa, which is a great painting, okay? But here are these others by I guess considered the most famous artist who ever lived, right? I think so. Da Vinci is considered the most famous artist who ever lived. He and Michelangelo, but I think Da Vinci. If you had to pick number one, probably Da Vinci's number one. And all these people were just walking by, not even giving it a glance.
Well, they were doing the checklist.
I don't know. There was this modern art show in Houston one time at the Fine Arts Museum, and we had to wait 3 hours in line because I thought, oh, this has got to be a magnificent exhibit. Silly me! I wish I had looked in the guide in the book before I. What a bunch of garbage!
Yep.
But people waited in there for hours and hours and hours, including myself. Big mistake. And we went through the exhibit, and I think in 15 minutes, because it was nothing but garbage. But, people, you tell them it's going to be great. Here in McAllen, I have probably the finest collection of stained glass windows, Tiffany windows, anywhere in the world, okay? Which has taken me 20 years to collect. More than in Florida or anywhere. There's only like a couple of stained glass museums in the world. It's the finest collection you're going to see in one place, probably in the world. I don't make a big deal about it. The museum doesn't even promote it. That guy they have running it doesn't even promote it. He promotes this other whatever. And you don't see it anywhere. No one says anything about it. If I put an ad in the paper, let's say in New York, and I put there something like Tiffany stained glass windows, greatest collection of Tiffany stained glass windows in the Met for 6 weeks, they'd be around the block.
Exactly.
Okay? And here, I can't even get these guys to promote it. I guess these are the same guys who built the library.
Well,
but,
I think what you've got is, and you hit it before, they're not teaching the kids to read the basics. We're losing our appreciation for Western civilization.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's a loss of the appreciation of Western civilization, and its roots come from the democracies of ancient Greece, which was when man, or at least as far as we're aware, when man first expressed themselves as individuals beyond the animal. Okay? Hey, that's it. Gotta go. 7 on KRV. Thanks for calling, Pete. Always appreciate it. 7 on KRV. Talkback, Dr. Lawrence Gelman, home of the microphone. Be back next week. And I don't know if it's going to be travelogue or politics, but it'll be something you don't hear anywhere else.